Welcome to another episode of the Mind Takeaway podcast.
Welcome.
Today we wanted to talk about an interesting topic that's been coming up over what would you say, Mira, the last 6 months or so?
Well, I think so, yeah.
And it's about the use of AI in coaching. And what I mean by that is there's lots of uses for AI, right? The so-called chat versions that lots of people are using. I don't want to mention anyone in particular to advertise it. You can ask it questions, you can find a source of information, but as we've said in previous episodes, quite often there's something called hallucination where AI seems very eloquent and very clever, and you're like, wow, look at that information, look at that research, it's just presented in front of me in the press of a button, only to find later on, and hopefully if you're diligent enough to find out that some of it's not true. So that takes us on to the topic of what's the experience of using AI to coach you instead of having a human coach?
Yeah. And it's been, I've been talking to people to therapists as well, who have spoken to the clients, the patients that use AI to do therapy, saying, oh my God, this is amazing. This is the best thing ever. I'm asking it questions and it's just telling me great stuff. And same with coaching, where people use AI to coach themselves. And I guess it could be for coaching, it could have some, I don't know if I can say a benefit, but if it has some coaching model and some questions inside, it could ask you some questions that you can reflect on. In therapy, what we've discovered is that it doesn't challenge you, and that's why it feels good, because there is no challenges. It doesn't ask you hard questions. It doesn't pick up on the nuances of your tone of the voice, of your emotions, of your body language, of how comfortable or uncomfortable you are. It's basically just asking you some questions, and it's more likely to tell you something that you want to hear, because that's how it works, which is totally opposite from therapy and coaching, for that matter, is that it's challenging you. It's asking you something that it's uncomfortable. And I guess that's one of the reasons why people like it. People don't like to be uncomfortable, and sometimes working with a coach or with a therapist can feel uncomfortable. You might feel judged, but that's also one of the points that you overcome those feelings in your sessions. And so it's a big drawback, it's a big negative in using it. It's because, first of all, it cannot assess you properly. It's not curious, One of the things that coaches especially are curious about, where does it come from? Why do you think the way you think? Why, And the AI doesn't do that. It just doesn't have that ability to connect and empathize and on a deeper level. It doesn't pick up on these nuances, and I'm wondering if it will ever be able to, because it doesn't have human experience. And so to go deeper and to have real results, it's really, really impossible, I think.
Yeah, I would say at the moment, who knows what the future holds, right? Maybe we'll all be replaced by that. But yeah, just for us, in our experience running the business that we have and the type of clients that we have and the kind of impact and the results that our clients are trusting and expecting us to help them with. Yeah, you make a good few points there. I think the biggest one for me is around the fact that you need someone not just as a sparring partner, but in a controlled way, in a trustworthy way, and with compassion and empathy to be able to push back when the client is going down the wrong path. And the tricky thing with AI, from what we've seen from these coaching models in its current iterations, with the technology and the limits where it's at the moment, is that it can make you feel good. So yeah, I can understand on the therapy side, it can be, as a short-term measure to get maybe dipping your toe in the water into therapy and coaching, you might look at these models and look at, as you said, Mira, some of the questions around what a coach or a therapist might ask you and what would that look like, so you can kind of manage your expectations. But further to that, it's tricky because you don't want a dependency of something just blowing smoke up your arse. Sorry to say it in such a harsh way, but you know, even for us having a coach, I want someone to spot my bullshit and be brave and bold enough to say, hey, Peter, I know what that might look like, it's a good idea, but let's explore your options. Is that really clarity? And then snap me back into reality, and then hopefully pull me back from making some ill-informed mistakes. And I just thinking about our current clients, Mira, you know, in terms of some of the leadership coaching that we're doing, it just, to go to an AI model, it just wouldn't work.
It's like, I just can't even imagine it. The depth of questions, the conversations, the ideas. I don't think it would be possible at all.
I think one of the biggest things that we haven't talked about so far as well is that over the years, as I've got more experience as a coach, and please chime in, Mira, I see coaching as more as a listening experience and more about holding space. And yes, you could argue an AI model has access to your microphone and camera so it can see and hear you, but is it holding space? Not really. You know, what we're doing as experienced coaches is really listening and forming a deep human connection with that individual, whether it's like this, like a video setting virtually, or doing it in person. You're still building a human connection with that person, and then seeing where you go in that interaction and collaboration as the conversation goes. I just don't think that any current model has that nuances built in. It's not able to have that complexity and get into flow and just see where it goes, to then come back with options and ideas and give that client some clarity and lead them down a path by asking certain questions. And yes, you could argue that a model can be preloaded with modalities and NLP and all of that, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mira, we're of late, especially the last 3 or 4 years, we don't really do so much modalities-based coaching. It really is just a collaboration of being super comfortable, not knowing what the hell's going to happen next. I'm being okay with that, but also trusting our experience and our judgment, and being able to get in deep connection with that client, and then finding a way forward, and then leaving the call, seeing your client is left in a better place.
Yeah, and you know, if a person is drawn to using chatbots to help them with whatever they're struggling with, my first question would be why? Why are you more comfortable doing that with a machine than with a human being? And or what are the reasons for it, you know? And that could be maybe a starting point on a challenge or an internal issue that you need to work on. You know, people are scared of judgment, and that is something that we work on with our clients. People are scared of criticism. People are scared of making mistakes, saying wrong things. People are scared of failure, of failing, and so all of these things are the reasons why you drawn to using something that it has impersonal connection. So you're kind of doing a fake connection, doing impersonal well, not connection really, doing something that makes you feel comfortable, as opposed to actually dealing with the challenges that you might be experiencing in order to live a more full life and have the experience that you want.
Yeah, you make a good point there about, I get it that, you know, since COVID, things got a bit weird, right? And for whatever reason, people feel not so comfortable around other human beings, and they're like, could I really allow that much autonomy and trust in another human being and bare my soul and all of that? if it helps, and for anyone listening and watching our podcast, that, you know, we would slowly but surely incrementally work on these things. And it's actually something we do quite often. I mean, I don't know about you, Mira, but most of the initial connection, whether it's before we agree to work together over some period, you know, over a fixed time, it's really to explain, you know, how it's going to be, that it's a safe space, and things will bubble up to the surface where you might feel deeply uncomfortable or threatened or whatever, you know, strong emotions come up, but it's going to be okay. And if you're willing to give me some level of trust before I, you know, confirm to you that I am trustworthy, then it's going to be okay. And that's usually where it's starting if someone's really worried about, you know, they're not really used to doing it in person, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And just to end, I would say that, you know, we're not saying that AI models are bad to dip your toe into learning what coaching is and the kind of questions. Why not? You know, you could always do your research. And I think that probably helps the plane land better when you agree. If you do agree to work with a human coach in the future, you'll probably be more clued up and understand some of the kind of questions a coach might ask, and how that, you know, for example, maybe a good start, maybe one suggestion, don't know what you think about this, Mira, is to, you know, search for coaching questions and ask yourself them and see how you emotionally react to those things. And then see what bubbles up to the surface, and that's kind of a good starting point, really.
It can be. It can give you a good idea, but then I'm also thinking about the client that we were talking to some few months ago that had who is actually a coach,
Yeah.
and a leader coaching a big sports team, and he asked, his question was in one of his sessions of how, you know, how is it that when I speak to you, when I'm in a session with you, in a connection, conversation with you, I get such deep insights and understanding and ideas that when I ask myself those questions on my own,
Yeah.
which would probably be, you know, using a chat, I don't get it. Like I don't, it's not the same impact. And so, you know, there was this conversation then about what is it that allows that person and that is creating the space, the ability of a coach or a therapist to create a space where you feel comfortable to explore, where you feel comfortable enough to explore some very uncomfortable things.
Yeah, and as we said, it's holding space, it's listening, it's getting into connection to allow that to happen. So I hope this has been useful. And as always, thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks, bye.